Okay, so in this video, welcome by the way, in this video we're going to start talking about how to add and subtract algebraic expressions. The critical point or the most important aspect or point to remember when dealing with adding and subtracting algebraic expressions is the idea of like terms. Okay, and to kind of give you the idea of what I mean by that, it's like when we dealt with fractions, right? You had to have like fractions, right? And how do we determine like fractions? It's the denominator, right? The kind of fraction that you're dealing with. Are you dealing with halves? Are you dealing with thirds? Are you dealing with sixteenths, right? The denominator tells you what type of fraction, and in order to combine fractions, right, add or subtract, you had to have the same kind of fraction. Well, it's the same thing with when you're adding or subtracting algebraic expressions. You have to have the same type of algebraic expression, right? And this is where the term like terms come in. So again, we talk about terms, you know what a term is. So in order to combine algebraic expressions using addition or subtraction, you have to have what's called like terms. Okay, you have to have the same type of term. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, let's give you an example. So first of all, if I have an algebraic expression like this, this is what we call the numeric part. Okay, this is also called the numeric coefficient. Okay, this is, oops. The numerical coefficient. Okay, this is called the literal part or the variable part. So we have the numerical part and the literal part or the variable part. Okay, now the literal part tells you what type of term, right? So the numerical part is just telling you how many of these you have, right? You have how many x's do you have here? This is saying you have two x's, 2 times x, right? So you have two groups of x. We don't know what x is, but it's telling us that we have 2 of them. Okay? So this is what's telling you what kind, I'm using it loosely, but what kind of term you have. Okay? Now, let's say I have another algebraic expression. Let's say I have this one. Again, this is the numerical part. And this is the literal part, or the variable part. Okay? Now again, if I wanted to combine these two terms, they have to have the exact same variable part or literal part. Okay? What does that mean? Okay, so here's the definition of like terms. Like terms are any two terms. Again, when I use the word term, it's assumed that you know it's an algebraic expression, right? That's combined by multiplication or division. Okay? So a term, so any two terms are any terms that are combined by adding or subtracting, right? So if I'm combining terms, what I mean by like terms is that they have the same literal part, which means the literal part or the variable part is exactly the same variable and it has the same exponent. Okay? Same variable with the same exponent. So in this case here, this would be an example of two terms that are like terms. Okay? Why? Because they both have x. And they both have x to the exponent of 1. Okay? So these would be considered like terms. So if I had something like this, 2x plus 5x, I can combine these using addition or subtraction. Because now I'm saying to myself, I have 2 x's and I have 5 x's over here, and I have 2 x's over here, and I want to add them together. So what do? 2 x's plus 5 x's gives me how many x's? 7 x's. So the rule is when I have like terms, I add or subtract, if it's a subtraction, right? So I add or subtract the numerical part, and I keep the variable part. So very similar to fractions. When we add fractions, we have to have a common denominator, right? Else we can't add them. Same thing here, we have to have like terms. And if they're common denominators, then guess what? We add the numerators and keep the denominator. Well, very similar to here, we add the numerical part and we keep the variable part. Okay, that's it.